Yeah, she got us to think about the first time in our childhood where we realised that we weren't the centre of the universe.
Mm.
And there was,
When was that for you, Nicola?
Well, I can remember,
Princess Nicola. When was that for you, Princess Nicola?
I remember it very well. I mean, my sister and I, Heather, were standing by the window watching our mother running down the road because she'd had enough of us.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember thinking very clearly, oh my God, I'm going to have to look after Heather now. Welcome to Own It, Your Business and Your Life, with Nicola Cairncross and Judith Morgan. In this podcast, we're going to cover everything you need to embrace to become a successful entrepreneur, marketing, money, and much, much more. How to create a business doing just what you love. How to own it, your business and your life. This one will be fast, funny, feisty, and very lively. So sit back and enjoy the show. Good morning to you.
Morning, caller. How are you?
Oh, I'm extremely overexcited, as you can imagine.
Yes, I can. I've seen the video and photographic evidence. In fact, I think we should call this show the Vegas one.
The Vegas experience, yes.
Yes.
So yes, do you want a very quick rundown of my week?
Yes, but don't tell us anything that would spoil the central section.
Oh, okay, I've been very careful.
Okay.
Okay, I'm a bit hoarse, obviously, due to a lot of karaoke.
Yes, but why don't you start off by explaining? Give people context that don't follow you on closely on social media as I do.
A week in Vegas, everything is sponsored, so every lunch is catered for. The days are full of learning and fun, and then every evening event is sponsored or supported by big companies. For example, we're going on a yacht trip today, and it's sponsored by ClickBank, because this Mastermind has grown in stature over the last 6 years to the point where it's really the one in the whole year calendar that everybody wants to be at, and so I just had to get myself here, pay for my hotel, and pretty much everything else is covered. I've put £120 down at the poker table, and I've still got £100 left, so I'm doing all right on that front. And no time to play poker, though. That's the thing. It's a hectic schedule, broken only by sleep and trying to catch up. Although there is there's always about an hour after the day finishes to go and lie in your hotel room in a dark room for a little while if you need to. What can I tell you? Sunday, the networking started before I even got to the Mastermind, because somebody came up to me at Gatwick in the morning and said, "Nicola, how are you doing?" So they recognised me from my picture and said hello, and we had a good old chat. He turned left into first class because he had so many air miles. It cost him no more to go into first class than I went into cattle class. But I ended up having two seats because the person next to me was not there. And I met a lovely young man called Luke, who was about Phoebe's age, who turns out to be travelling the world taking photographs for people like the Nevada Tourist Board. And we had a good old chat. And the reason we started talking was his friend came over to say hello. And he had he had a Casey Neistat sweatshirt on. And I recognised the logo, and when his friend went away again, I stole a Casey Neistat sweatshirt, and we got talking about Casey and Gary Vaynerchuk, and this kid he's only young, but if you want to look him up on Instagram, his photos are fabulous. It's called, I think it's Watch Luke is his handle on Instagram. So that was Sunday. I arrived, everyone went bowling. I had severe jet lag by then because I'd been up for 24 hours, including the fact that I hadn't really slept very well the night before, because I realised at 11:30 the night before the plane was going, I hadn't done my ESTA application, which is when you apply to Homeland Security to get a temporary visa to come into America. And they say allow 72 hours. So I was having a few heart attacks overnight about whether that would come back through in time. But good old Homeland Security saw me right. It was waiting for me when I woke up at 5 o'clock in the morning in a panic. So that was bad planning on my part. Monday was largely free in the daytime, and then we went to a welcome party at Liberace's mansion, which curiously enough, Judith, is in quite a run-down, ordinary suburb, and it's really like a very large bungalow. But when you get inside, it's all gilt and antiques and beautiful, beautiful furniture. And there were so many pianos everywhere. There were 2 grand pianos just in the front hallway, and then lots of little, like a lovely Art Deco piano in the area by the loo. So wherever you went, there were pianos. He must have really loved his pianos. That was great. So that's everyone getting to know each other. Tuesday we it was day 1 of the masterminding, and was it? Hang on, 1, 2, 3. No, it wasn't. Can't remember what we did Tuesday. Anyway, we went to the desert party. You probably saw that, with a real life camel, which we were all driven for an hour out into the desert, and you could see this tiny encampment of Bedouin tents. And as you got off, there were all these dancing girls with coloured smoke firing off everywhere. There was a drone, and you know how much I love drones. And there was this camel, which you could ride on if you wanted to. I passed on that. The bar was sponsored. There was dancing. There were fire pits. There was comfy chairs and sofas everywhere. There were 2 big pink armchairs on a pink rug, out in the desert. It was just brilliant. And then lots of lovely food. We danced till I don't know what time, and then they bust us all back about. So all the transport's taken care of. You just have to be at the front desk at reception by a certain time, and they take you off. Wednesday was, I think, our first day of masterminding, and then we went to the M Hotel buffet, which I've never seen such a big all-you-can-eat buffet in my whole life. And I managed to not overeat by heading largely for the Japanese and Chinese section. So, sushi and soup, and I love all that stuff. Nice, clean food, and I've got to say, the food at lunchtimes at the masterminding has been lovely. It's because obviously a lot of people are vegans, a lot of people are into their health. And the food has been really lovely, clean food. Normally you get lots of fried brown things, don't you, at buffets? Yeah. But lovely salads, lovely like pastrami, or, lots of cheeses, lots of couscous salads, and, what they called edamame beans and things like that. So that was really nice. And then on Thursday night, which is why I'm a little hoarse, we went out to the favourite Thai restaurant in several buses, and there was we'd taken over the whole restaurant, and there was a karaoke machine there. And actually, they don't have that machine there anymore, but they brought it back especially for us. And I was so adrenalised that day, because that was the day I did my 3 round tables. I led. They had 7 tables of 10 people, and you had 20 minutes, and you go and sit next to the expert of your choice. They present for 20 minutes and then give you something. And I had a table of my own, positioned me as an expert, which was really kind of the boys, and I really enjoyed it. And the funny thing is, it was quite early on in the proceedings, so I hadn't met everyone. There's 110 people here, and loads of people came and sat at my table. It was quite popular, and I did my thing, talked about it being everywhere online. I also talked about the email Armageddon that we talk about on this podcast regularly, and talked about chatbots and having your own app. And so many people have come up to me afterwards and said, wow, that was amazing. And interestingly, Marisa Peer and Marianne Williamson both spoke, and Marissa was here with her husband, John, who built up the chain of comedy clubs, Jongleurs. Do you remember that?
Yes, I do.
And
I remembered last week after we spoke about him, we were trying to remember the name of the music club, and then I realised it wasn't music at all, it was comedy.
Yeah. Well, he built up these chain of clubs across the country, and he sold them for multi-millions. And he rather smartly put a clause in the contract that if they screwed it up and it went tits up, the buyers, he could buy them back for £1. And that is exactly what happened over the next couple of years. So he bought them all back for £1, and he still owns them. And he's now into venture capital investing, and he has also a massive, because Marissa is one of the main speakers for Mind Valley. So they've attracted about 3,000 therapists who don't really know how to market themselves properly. And he came up to me afterwards and sat down, and he said, I'm so sorry I've missed your roundtables. Everybody's talking about them. Everybody loved it. Everyone's saying what great value you gave and how much you know. And he said, I'd really like to work with you. So he emailed his team, and we set up a meeting for when I get back, a virtual meeting, which is really nice. So I'm really very excited about that. And that was, then we went out to karaoke. So I was highly adrenalised, and although I've only ever done karaoke once in my life before on the Internet Marketers Cruise, and there is very bad video evidence on YouTube to prove that.
I remember.
I
It was the song you threatened to sing at my 50th, but never got around to it, that one.
James Morrison, You Give Me Something. Yeah, very bad. But it sounds great in my head. It just doesn't come out right.
I get it.
Yeah. But my new bestie, Dr. Alvin Hill, who is Hill or Hall, I can't remember. He's a professor at MIT, but he's such a lovely man. We've been hanging out together a week, and he said, "Do you want me to be your sidekick?" And I said, "Yeah, come on then." And so he got the sort of. But what you didn't see in the video is there were about 20 people doing the same dance right in front of me. They were all being the pips. It was so funny. And then we hadn't had enough by the end of that, so we went off to Ellis Island Hotel, where there's a permanent karaoke bar, and we all put our names down for various songs, and nobody was coming up. And then we suddenly twigged you had to tip the DJ to get a higher up on the list. So we all managed to get a song in by tipping the DJ, and I did Disclosure, Latch, usually sung by Sam Smith, but it was even poorer than my Midnight Trip to Jordan. I don't know if I'm quite brave enough to put it up in public, but I will send you a link privately.
Okay.
And then yesterday was the last day of the Masterminding, and the speaker was Joe Sugarman, who is a veteran ad man and a very successful serial entrepreneur. He told some very funny stories. He's quite an elderly gentleman now, and he sort of kept forgetting what he was saying, but he told some very funny stories about like the time he got permission from the Batman people to make a Batman credit card, and paid with his own money to get 250,000 of these Batman credit cards made. And then right at the minute, the Batman estate said, no, you can't do it. And he still got 250,000 Batman credit cards that he's now gives out at events to remind people that, and I think they came back to him 12 years later and said, yes, you can do it now because our CEO has changed, and the new one said yes. But by that time, Batman was pretty much over. So he was lumbered with 250 Batman credit cards that he gives out at events. And he gave some of his books, his copywriting books, to the youngest person in the room and the oldest person in the room, which was really nice. And he now is making an absolute fortune. He stumbled across those blue light sunglasses, the ones that you can sit and look at, and they cut out the blue light from your computer glare.
Yep.
And he is very busily selling those by the millions at the moment. And then we had a club party last night, which was sponsored by Glenn Ledwell of Mind Movies. Do you remember when Mind Movies came out? It was just after the secret.
Yeah.
Glenn and Natalie Ledwell were the masterminds behind that, and they sponsored the party last night. And there was a fabulous young DJ called Sammy, who plays in Ibiza most of the time, and he also plays it's multi-thousand parties where it's like a rock concert and there's 17,000 people, and he sings at the same time as DJing, and he had a live saxophonist with him. Talking of which, I spent quite a lot of time last night with Scott from Pink Floyd, Supertramp, and Toto. He's a saxophonist for those bands, and he is such a nice man. And really, today is a yacht cruise for 5-7 hours around Lake Las Vegas. Then tomorrow it's the final wrapping up party at another mansion somewhere.
Okay.
How's your week been?
Well, by comparison, what you've just done is divided the listeners into two halves, the extroverts and the introverts. And what you've just described is merry hell for the introvert. And except I've been living in my equivalent little introvert life here in this tiny micro, I don't know what you'd call it. It's not even a village. It's bigger than a village. But anyway, a town. It's a micro town. It's really nice here. I've been to do the scariest thing that I can ever do in a new place, which is to the hairdressers.
Oh, yeah.
And had a fabulous experience. So much so that I was talked into doing something I absolutely never do at the hairdressers, which is I bought the product.
Oh, upsell, nicely.
Yes, upsell, yeah. And if we can find time between now and the 31st of May, which looks extremely unlikely because this hairdresser is very busy, we're going to have another go at the metallic silver dyeing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, which didn't work last time because they dyed me brown, if you remember.
Oh, yeah.
But it's because my hair's so short, that's all been cut out now. But I'm chuffed to bits. And I've also had a retail therapy week where I've bought an entire new summer wardrobe, 2 pairs of shoes, replaced my bath towels, and bought myself a few treats. I really like it here. It's a tiny town that's full of smiley, chirpy, can-do, productive people. The hairdressers, for instance. When I walked in, I thought, this might be full of old age pensioners. But then I noticed it was full of people on both sides, the team and the customer sides. It was full of people of all ages. It was inclusive. It was full. They were making people book their next appointments next time they came back. Yesterday was the 10th of May. They may not be able to squeeze me in for the colour before the 31st. That's how full they are.
Wow.
They're doing something right. And honestly, it's a micro town. I'll look up the population in a minute. But anyway, Karen Wilmot, formerly of Oman, who's gone back to South Africa, has done our first South African review, and it worked.
Oh, well done, Karen.
Yes, well done, Karen. And since my air tasker first experience went so well, and because I've had an evil bout of sciatica since I've been here, which is terribly painful. Yeah, do you remember I had it when I was writing my book? Do you remember?
I do remember, yeah.
I came back, I think it's because of all this moving stuff in and out of the car. I've hired them to come and fill my car up again for me from the 31st of May. So it's been a sort of really nice. This house is nice, the light's nice, the weather's nice, the garden's nice, the people are nice, everything's nice. You know, a cleaning lady came yesterday who was paid for by the lady that owns the house. The first time I haven't paid for cleaning for, I don't know, decades. When I got back, she'd taken in the parcels with my clothes that arrived, and she was jolly and chirpy, and she said, when I let myself in, I couldn't believe how lovely and clean and tidy it was. I said, oh yeah, sorry, I'm a bit neat and clean and tidy. She said, I thought, well, there's nothing for me to do. And she went, hooray. And she said, all the other house sitters have been, you know, they've created nightmares of sticky kitchen floors. Yeah, apparently.
Oh, really?
Anyway, but she was an example of just a nice, chirpy person who, you know, we were 2 strangers. We hit it off, a bit like me and the hairdressers. 2 strangers hit it off. You know, the really what's coloured this week and colouring a lot of my life at the moment is the vortex. You know, is that yesterday morning I said, everything is always working out for me, and how that would manifest today would be if the parcels I'm expecting would come before I go to the hairdressers, or while the cleaning lady is here while I'm at the hairdressers, and when I get back. And that happened. And you know what I mean? It's just like, things have gone well. I've spent money. I've enjoyed spending money. I was a big tipper at the hairdressers. It's all vortex related, really.
Yeah.
But Vegas, it ain't, Nicola.
Well, you know, it's interesting you say that about the introvert thing, because I am actually quite an introvert.
No, you're on the cusp like me. You're 50-50. You're a creator.
But there's the thing about this is you don't have to force yourself to go up and speak to people. You are thrown together on the buses, at the dinners. You know, you end up sitting next to people and naturally just
it's still travelling in a posse of 100 people, which is I'd rather have teeth pulled, honestly.
Well, there's quite a lot of introverts here anyway, and they go to their room to recharge, and they come.
Yes, and I realised while you were talking why the decade of us running those and me attending them was such hell for me. Is because it's posse behaviour.
Yeah.
And I can see, because I know quite a lot of people who are there with you, so I can see whose personality thrives in that environment.
Mm. Okay, so we better move on to fuel by fire then.
Yes, I mean, better make it smartish, because it took 15 minutes on the first question.
I know. It's so funny because we're going to talk about the podcast later. I'll come back to that.
Okay.
So 3 things: being around brilliant minds. There are some seriously clever people here. And it was really funny. There was one moment at the end of one of my masterminds when a hypnotherapist chap who's very successful, Dr. Stephen Jones, leant over and he said, "Have you ever had your intelligence tested?" And I said, "Yes, I have, and it was actually rather remarkably disappointingly average." And he said, "Well, I think you might have filled the form in wrong, because
wouldn't surprise me."
We're not very intelligent, that though, is it? And getting great feedback from my things. I went to another table yesterday, and a guy called Mark Ling, who is a very introverted, incredibly successful man. He's had 3 or 4 7 multi-million launches. And he said to me, I was at your table the other day and I was really impressed. He said the way you stood, the way you held yourself, the way you spoke, your obvious deep knowledge of your topic. And I just thought, God, getting great feedback like that about what you do is so affirming. It really made me cry. It was amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And also attracting new friends. You know, people keep kissing me, Judith. It's very strange.
How do you feel about that, Nicola?
Oh, it's on the cheek. You know, I quite like it. I quite like it.
Okay, that's interesting.
And being surrounded by such incredibly positive, successful people who don't even consider failure. Oh, well, they do. Joe Sugarman said he considers himself the biggest failure in the world because he's always trying new things, but he doesn't take it personally if he fails. And the one thing that happened to us, that terrible thing that damaged both our confidence, didn't it? And I'm very much reminded of that, something I read recently where it was something about starting any new business is a 50-50 chance of success. It's either going to fail or succeed or do something in the middle that means you have to just close it down and put it out of its misery. But the only wild card about starting a business is the 1% element, which is you. And I wish I'd known that before, because I always felt that I'd failed with when the money gym had to close, and I know now it wasn't that. It was circumstances. I shouldn't have taken it personally. I should have picked myself, dusted myself off, and carried on knowing that I was a winner. And so being surrounded by people like that is a very uplifting experience.
I thought it was interesting when you said in the first section that you said something about a man from MIT, and you said, but he's very nice, as if clever people couldn't be nice. A man from MIT would be an absolute, I'd be making a beeline for him, because you not always say a man's brain is his most attractive organ.
Well, absolutely. I mean, everyone thinks he's very handsome, and he bought me a couple of gins so he could pick my brains in the bar last night.
Deal. One gin would have.
Well, absolutely, and I'm sure he thought I was trying to chat him up properly. It was a strange mismatch, but he's so much fun. He really is. Anyway, what about your? Well,
I've had a nice week. I only went to work on Tuesday because Monday was a bank holiday, and I'd been off for 10 days by then. So it was coming back from a holiday, and I had this evil sciatica backache, which is much worse from sitting at a chair. So I was very anxious when I sat down on Tuesday morning, but actually had two giant killer days. Tuesday and Wednesday were heavily sedated, but it worked. And I did useful work with clients. And one day I did so many brilliant things. I had to write a list and share it in one of my groups. I've done a full week's work, and very useful it has been. And one of it is a piece that relates to us, which is the most recent client that I've attracted, who came to me through the podcast, who is an artist and in California. She told me this week what she liked about the show, which I thought you would like to hear about.
Oh, I'd love to, yeah.
Obviously, although she's American, she has British relatives from a while back, so she doesn't find us too strange. So she likes that sort of cultural aspect of it. But she said it's the friendship, the relationship, the mutual respect and honesty. Yes, it's lovely to pick up the odd biz tip in there, but she likes the story, the real endeavour by two relatable human beings, was what she said. So it's exactly this point that we're just beginning to work out, I think, and why we're enjoying our listener guests so much is because it's the story, which is, we always knew that, then we forgot it. We thought we'd do a podcast about business, and we just talked about business for a year, even though we'd said it would be your business and your life. We forgot about that. Then you got a life. Then we realized we could talk about our lives. It's the stories of, this week, they're going to love this. Here you are in Vegas mixing with all these people. What a great story.
Yeah, it is. And one of the speakers was Perry Belcher, who is an old-time internet marketer. He got online, right back in the early days when the internet was just starting. And his whole presentation was about story.
Yeah.
And all the things that I've been learning with the Story Grid and anything. You get on stage or a podcast, or you do a video, or you do anything, and you say, I want you to imagine. And immediately you're ready to hear a story, aren't you, when you say, I want you to imagine. And Joe Sugarman was brilliant at telling stories yesterday that had us all going. It was fantastic. I've cried many times, Judith. You might find funny.
Yes. Well, I would have been with you on that, I think. Yeah. But in this context, Friday the 7th of June is the morning that you and I have agreed we'll do the next 4 listener guests. I'm stacking them up. I've got 2 who've agreed. They haven't agreed to the date yet. But if the date that you and I choose to do doesn't work for them, I take it as the big you saying, no, not you, not this time, but next time, please. Yeah. Some of the people I really want to talk to include Kerin from Australia, who is our most recent person that we've made a relationship with in the Facebook group, who waved at us a few weeks ago, and she's just published a book. She'd be great, but she can't do that day, but never mind. And I want to talk to Nicola Semple, who's lining me up with a tantalising topic, but she can't do that day either. But Friday the 7th of June, listeners, is the day in the morning that Nicola and I are recording the next 4. We've got 2, possibly 3. If you're free, wave at me, please. That's working. People are waving at me, which is great.
Good. Yeah, good. Because they're very popular. I mean, some of our most popular episodes, aren't they?
And they should be, really. And I think if we start to think of it like that, what we thought of it in the beginning was they brought the topic, which I think is interesting. If somebody still wants to do that, do that. But we're just as interested as hearing your story. One of the 2 that have agreed is Claire Hanbury, who you and I have both known for, I don't know, 10 or 15 years, and who runs a not-for-profit. And she has always been interested in what she can take from our business stuff and apply to her worldwide charity. So, that's an interesting story in itself. And I know you can't qualify, rare. I was going to say, I was going to qualify the word unique, which I hate. You can't do that. It's either is unique or it isn't. It's rare in our community, because we tend to think of our listeners as mainly solo self-employed people. And I think Claire thinks of herself like that in some ways, but she's running a completely different thing. So I'm worried you've told me everything you were going to tell me in Focus of the Week. Okay, great. Are we talking about the power of masterminding, or what are we talking about?
Yeah, we're starting to talk about the power of masterminding now. And of course, the first person who coined the term was Napoleon Hill in Think and Grow Rich, where he was sent around to interview by the Andrew Carnegie, the steel baron. Yeah. Sent around to interview lots of successful cohorts of his and find out what the secrets of success were. But what Napoleon Hill ended up with was a mastermind group of people he could call on at any time and speak to and ask questions of and things. And I was thinking about the elements of this mastermind is why this is so successful, is they don't throw us straight into learning. It's more than that. A mastermind group is more than that. It's about creating friendships. And those friendships have grown over the week very slowly. I mean, Alvin and I've been hanging out, having a laugh and doing karaoke and things. And I turned to him yesterday, I said, do you know what, Alvin, I know you were a professor at MIT, but I know nothing about what you're doing now. And he said, Nicola, I've just been waiting for you to get to that point, waiting patiently. Would you like to come to the bar with me and I'll show you everything?
Oh, bless.
So it took 4 or 5 days for us to get to the point where we even bothered to talk about our businesses and how we could help each other, which was nice. And that, so plenty of time. A good mastermind, I think, gives plenty of time to get to know the people involved. And of course, there is a chemistry there because not everybody gets on with everybody. I mean, it's an incredible crowd of people, but I'm energetically drawn to some over others, and I'm sure the same is going on where some people think, oh no, I don't like her at all, but and then there's others who sort of make a beeline for you. You have to go with it's not about selling, it's about giving, and it's about going with the attitude of how can I help, how can I help, how can I help.
Service.
Yeah, service, absolutely. And they had a lovely feature where they had 2 walls and you got a card that said, my one wish is, and then you also got another card that said, I can help with, and you had to write your one wish on one side, put it up, and then how I can help you with blah, blah, blah on the other one. And then on the back, there was space for people to write their names if they could either help you or grant your wish, or if they were interested in the help you could offer, which was really nice. And then one of the lunchtimes they stood up and read them all out, so everyone knew what everyone's wish was. And there's also, the wide range of ages here, which is really rich. Eleanor, Peter Harm's daughter, is here. She's 11, and she's just literally last week published her first book on Amazon. I mean, it's just amazing.
Bless her.
I know. She is. She came last year to the Mastermind, and she's homeschooled, so she's quite. She doesn't really hang out with lots of people, but Pete and Eleanor take her everywhere with them, and she's become very much part of the family out here, and she's dancing on the stage. She's, she went up to get her books from Joe Sugarman, and she said, what my one wish is, if it's my book to do well on Amazon. So I said, what's it about? And she said, oh, it's a gaming story. It's a quest. It's an adventure quest set in a game. And I said, oh, I've just been listening to the story grid, and the guy who's on that is in that, and he's in a specific niche. Let me look it up for you. And somebody else suggested that everyone goes and buys her book, which we all know is the route to a bestseller in a short space of time. So we also bought her the domain name alanasbook.com and alanasbook.com.
Yeah.
So it was easy for people, and we redirected it to her Amazon page so that it was easy for people to go and buy it.
Yes.
So there's 101 sales been made in one day of her book, and I put her into the category that she should be in, which gives her a better chance, because she was just in general science fiction and general young adult, and I knew that she needed to be in lit RPG, which is literature about role-playing games. Now, what are the chances of someone being in the room who knew specifically exactly which category she had to be in to have a chance of success? And that's the thing, you have to ask for help, go to serve. And then we started learning new skills. There were, some of the presentations were not learning orientated. For example, Marianne Williamson was all about her presidential race, and how there is a massive, you won't be surprised to hear this at all, Judith, I'm sure, massive conspiracy by the traditional media in the US to stop her in her tracks. But she, apparently you need something like 400 individual contributions across a minimum number of states to be allowed to run for president, and she smashed that target out of the park. She had something like a couple of thousand in every state, because she's got such a big mailing list, of course.
Yeah.
And she's, the women's vote, she could really do some damage here. And so that was, that wasn't a learning opportunity, but it was a really interesting talk. Marisa hypnotised us all. She talked about what the I Am Enough movement, and I said, I'm a customer of yours. I managed not to be too girly fangirl. But so she was talking about the whole problem of people just feeling that there's something wrong with them because, and taking things personally when things go wrong. And then she actually led us in a very powerful 15-minute meditation. And I know she was getting us to say things out loud with our eyes closed. And I could tell from the people around me that some of them were crying. It was releasing stuff for them. It was,
and isn't that interesting, that because they're all actually in the main high achievers, but she was hypnotizing you around the topic of not being enough.
Yeah, she got us to think about the first time in our childhood where we realised that we weren't the centre of the universe. And there was,
When was that for you, Nicola?
Well, I remember,
Princess Nicola. When was that for you, Princess Nicola?
I remember it very well. I mean, my sister and I, Heather, were standing by the window watching our mother running down the road because she'd had enough of us. And I remember thinking very clearly, oh my God, I'm going to have to look after Heather now. Not realising at 5 or 6 or whatever it was that she should come back. You don't realise as a child.
No.
We thought we'd been so bad she was running away.
Yes.
And it just popped into my head, and then she asked us to remember 2 other occasions, and by the end of that, the tears were streaming down my face. You can imagine.
Yes.
I'm choking up just thinking about it.
Yeah.
So then obviously a big part of Mastermind attending is the follow-up afterwards. So people have already started emailing me. I've given everyone who came to my table a free membership in my thing. I mean, Dr. Alvin's in my 21-day challenge, which is a little bit daunting as he is a professor of learning and achievement. So, but that's the easiest way to follow up, is to give people a sample of
experience.
Yeah. And then even if they don't use it themselves, they will remember you, and they'll be
They know enough about it to refer. Yeah,
exactly. What else have I got here written here? Well, that's pretty much it at the moment. But I know Penny Power is Penny and Thomas Power have just started there for mastermind groups. They're trying to recreate the spirit of Academy, which was really one of the first masterminds I ever belonged to, Academy Black Star.
Yeah. In
2006, I think it was. And I really always enjoyed going to those events too, because they were all based around not selling and learning and sharing and giving. And gratitude has been, I've written here gratitude ! Because at every break that Paul Fugel is getting on stage and acknowledging anyone who's helped and contributed or sponsored, and it's a very genuine thing, and people are giving the time to listen to that and then applaud the people, and the whole thing, the theme of gratitude runs right through the whole theme. It's really very powerful.
Mm. Are they working hard, those two?
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Paul says he's got I'm going to have to beat this out afterwards. He says he's got a that spreadsheet when he was noting down all the things that make him go, I'm never doing this again.
Yes. Well done to him.
And it's quite a big spreadsheet, apparently.
Yes.
and oh no, they're amazing. I mean, I'm going to talk a bit more about them in Who or What's Impressed, so I won't go any there. Have you been in masterminds or ever apart from?
Well, we've led them in the Money Gym. I've led them privately. I've done quite a lot of them. I think that there's a low-level core of this that runs through the groups that I run now. But they're quite small, both of my groups at the moment. But, there was an example this week where somebody who's been a client of mine, in everything I've done for a decade or so, was called out by at least 2 other members of the club for being, such a leader that when they joined the group 4 years ago, they thought, oh my God, I'm so out of my depth. Yeah. But now, they realize that they too have grown in stature in their own ways. And sometimes good to have mixed levels of ability within a group too, so that it causes the right sort of person to up their game. We always start with the thing that you said about, getting to know each other. And sometimes that's quite difficult for people because they want to crack on with what we're here to learn, but it is, really it's a mathematical thing, isn't it? Which is, you've got 100 people there. What's 100 times 100? It's a big number, isn't it? It's the power. It's the power of the 100 of you knowing as many of those 100 as you want to, and helping each other.
Yes, and that's what I've been really impressed. I think perhaps this mastermind particularly, but probably most masterminds attract a certain kind of person, and the people here, even the really, really phenomenally successful ones, are here to give.
Well, I think they've learned the power of that.
Yes, yeah.
If you remember that chap, what was his name? I said to you the other day, oh, he does that, doesn't he? I can't remember his name now. But that was his number one rule, which is, you come to help.
Yeah, you come to serve. Yeah.
Yes.
Exactly. And humble and grateful. It's really two very attractive qualities in super successful people.
Yes, and of course not thinking you are. The humility comes from not believing your own publicity, not thinking you are something. You're just a person. I think that's really quite encouraging to other people as well, to know that somebody who is a hero of ours or seems to be doing something very brave still feels like a normal human being inside.
Yeah, a little child who was left.
Yes, yeah. So yes, exactly. There were one of my clients this week who I haven't been working with very long, who's a single mum in her late 30s. We had the I am not enough conversation, and the fact that she's alone a lot of the time, but that I appreciate and enjoy her so much, but she's alone. And you had people like that who are much more outwardly successful, but feeling that they weren't enough to be moved by Marisa's meditation in that environment means it's a common theme that we all share.
Yeah.
And that, so not to be too big in your boots and not to think it's hopeless. It's somewhere in the middle, isn't it, of finding an equilibrium that we can all live with in ourselves.
Yeah. And I told her afterwards how much she'd moved me, and she said, "Yes, I could see you were crying." And I got back to an email giving me access to the whole I Am Enough program, which is
lovely. And the other thing about masterminds, of course, is excluding the logistics that Philly and Paul are handling. Technically, if you're the facilitator, the group runs itself if you do your job well, because it's about the connections that the people are making. It's a bit like you put 100 cows in a field. Well, cows is the wrong example, really, because I don't think cows do networking. But if let's say you're the farmer and you've got 100 animals in a pen, they're doing all the work. You're just watching and doing what you know from the outside. So actually, as a facilitator, if you know what you're doing, facilitating a mastermind group well is a relaxed role, because the people are doing all the work and should be. That's what you're creating, that they help each other.
Yes, that's right. You don't have to perform.
No, there's no glorious leader.
No. And this is big business, by the way. I mean, a lot of people here in the room here are members of more than one mastermind, costing about £25,000 a year.
Yes.
And they travel 4 times a year to this mastermind.
Because they know it keeps them on their game, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And men makes connections. And so actually, if you only had to go networking 4 times a year, it'd be worth it.
Yeah, and the other thing is you can do it simply. They don't have to be, massive lavish affairs like this one is. It can be just, you and a bunch of sympathetic business people who are non-competing. I think that's important. That's how this thing started.
You dropped out.
Well, just one more point. I just wanted to say to everyone that you don't have to do, create a lavish thing like I'm at. You can just get together a bunch of sympathetic businesses, non-competing. Businesses work quite well, and just get together once a quarter in your in each other's homes even, and the format is basically to say what's been your what's been your achievements in the last quarter, what's your biggest challenge, and how can we help. And just the accountability factor is not to be underestimated there, because
one of my when I was staying with Emma in Somerset last year, in quite a small town, she's a member of the local Chamber of Commerce, and they kind of do that together. I mean, they're all physical businesses, but I don't think it makes any difference. Yes,
I agree. So I used to enjoy the Chamber get-togethers a lot.
Right, did you have a word?
I do. My word of the week, which spells WOW, is wow.
I bet.
There's actually a lady here who's doing all the emceeing, who's beautiful and a great singer, and she's called the Wow Maker, because she makes you able to be more wow-like when you're on TV and stage. And it's but that I've lost count on the amount of time I've said wow this week.
Yeah.
What about you?
Mine was endurance, because actually it goes back to something that you said earlier. I can't remember what you said now. You said, oh yes, Paul's spreadsheet to remind him never to do the thing again. I told my niece after she finished the marathon the story that I used to remind myself never to do something ever again, because she wants to be reminded never to run the marathon ever again. And of course, pain fades quite quickly unless you create a really powerful pledge to yourself. It's like childbirth, isn't it? You wouldn't do it immediately afterwards again, but within 6 months or a year, you're ready to contemplate it. Now, I cycled once. I've told this story before, I think, on this show. I cycled once in the 70s from Oxford to Henley, where my parents had a boat, and stayed on the boat for a week with a couple of other friends. And Oxford, obviously, is a town full of cyclists. But I had a sort of retro bike with no gears, a bit like my smartphone that isn't smart. And they would sort of whiz ahead because they had gears and sit down and wait for me. And no sooner did I join them than we get on the bikes and go again. So I never had a rest on this trip. And it was awfully arduous. And as we were cycling back into Oxford a week later, I went, I will never, under any circumstances, ever do anything like this again. But unless you have that spreadsheet and you can somehow burn that pain into your memory, you will do it again. But I chose this week because of the sciatica pain, which is so awful. There's only one way through it. It's endurance. And I remembered why, because it's nerve pain, and painkillers don't work on nerve pain. So I've been thinking all week, why aren't these painkillers working? And yesterday I remembered. So you just have to endure it until it goes away, basically, whether it's having a baby or cycling to Oxford and back or running 26 miles or running an event like that in Vegas. You have to, if you really mean that you never want to do it again, because of the endurance factor, you have to, I'm thinking of those things that people do with cattle. You brand them, you burn it into their flesh. You have to somehow hang on to that. I will never do this again.
And of course, Paul was making, honestly, Andy and I were crying with laughter last night, because Paul was saying, of course, it's even worse organising an event for entrepreneurs, because they're the people who do not play by the rules. They do not abide by the rules.
No. We had a whole episode. We had a whole episode on that. Why won't entrepreneurs do as they're told? They won't. Yeah. That's the nature of the beast, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, project updates then.
Yeah, you go.
Okay, I've had of course, the big news this week is that someone, lovely listener, has submitted our podcast to British Podcast of the Year Awards. I didn't do it. I didn't even know they were on. So thank you very much for whoever submitted us, and then someone picked up on it and let us know. And of course, we really.
I don't think we were submitted. I think the first person to let us know was able to vote. Everybody was offered the opportunity to vote for one that nobody had heard of, and I think it was Liz Truckle that went first and shared it to us. So we weren't on that site. We haven't been nominated. We're not on that site. But anybody that listens to podcasts was able to, say which one they liked, and then now we've encouraged other people to join in and say, yes, I like that one too.
Well, they must have some kind
No. Anybody can vote for any podcast they like.
Yes, but what I'm intrigued by then is the technical side of it. They must, because if you start typing a podcast name, it comes up. So they must have.
It does now. Well, yes, but they must be connected to a database of those, mustn't they? Which must be connected to Libsyn or iTunes or something like that.
Okay. Anyway, so voting closes on the 15th, but because by the time you hear this, lovely listener,
it's too late.
It'll be too late.
Yeah, it will. Yeah.
Don't go to any trouble on our behalf.
But thank you if you did vote, which is lovely. And we'll be maybe we'll be more on it this time next year.
Yeah. And I went and had a look at Libsyn, and we've got 108,152 downloads.
Okay.
So that's growing, and actually, although it has come down off those massive highs from a couple of weeks ago, it's still up on what it was. So it's
okay.
Good. It's all good.
Okay.
What about you?
No news on Worthing, except that there was a second viewing, and the feedback from the second viewing was, we've got it on the market for 120. They thought it was worth 115, and although our particulars say offers in excess of 120,000. I think if it was me and I thought it was worth 115, I would have made a cheeky offer, wouldn't you?
Yeah, absolutely. It's
bizarre. I mean, there's nothing. 5,000 is nothing.
Yeah.
Anyway, doesn't matter. But the feedback of the second person was, you've overpriced it by $5,000, which I think is nothing, frankly. But anyway. Moving swiftly along, who or what inspired you?
Well, I'm going to talk about Paul and Philly Fugel, who are Clear Focus Consulting, and they have taken on this task. Pete said it's aged in 50 years by doing it the last 5 years. They started to get involved last year, and they're both. Paul's an interesting man because he's a very big picture thinker, but he's also a beast on detail is how he was described yesterday. And Philly is very organised. She used to be very organised when I first met her, and they really have pulled this amazing thing together. And they're working with a Brit, who does Brits to Vegas. So he organises specialist events for people who are British and coming to Vegas for whether it's a hen night or a works do. And his name is Paul Scally, which is a rather brilliant name for a Brit in Vegas, isn't it?
Yeah.
And he's been incredible. He was the one who made their ideas about events come to life and sourced everyone on the ground. And he was the one, in fact, that found the camel. And I said to him, well, how did you find a camel? And he said it wasn't that hard. There's quite a few camels around Vegas, but the owners were a bit unsure about transporting them into the desert, which I found a bit hilarious.
Because he's been born and brought up in a zoo or something.
Yeah, exactly. But the camel was very well behaved, so he didn't just source a camel; he sourced a very nice, friendly, well behaved camel. He didn't spit or kick at all. And but clearfocus.consulting, if you want any big projects doing or organising or
but that isn't what they do generally, is it?
Well, Paul's a business coach, but I actually think he's. In fact, I want to tell him because I've been looking at his website while I was prepping for this show, and I think he's playing a bit small. I think they should go into not event management necessarily, but project management, because they have run. I mean, it's been absolutely on time. Everybody's said how organised it is, how a pleasure it is to be here, how on time it is. How everyone's being really looked after. Nothing's gone wrong with the AV. It's just been, they organised all the brochure and the cards, and it's just an amazing job. So Paul and Philly, well done.
Can I ask the people who have paid to attend how much they've paid?
I'd rather not say if you don't mind.
Okay, I'm trying to get the maths in it. Everything you've described today sounds very expensive, and I'd like to know how many people.
It's not a profit centre right now, but they're looking at ways that they could possibly make it into one. So I know that I know that some people have paid several £1,000s to be here, and some newer people, not the people who were originally being thanked for their efforts in supporting launches and things.
Yeah.
And I know that Paul and Philly have made hardly any money out of it, and the boys have made no money out of it. They're just here, So it has been an incredibly expensive thing, but I think they're looking at ways at making it into a profit centre going forwards, because everyone's very upset at the idea that it might not happen again, because it's not making money.
An awful lot of work for not much money. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay, so what's impressed you this week?
Well, the man from DHL, who was one of the couriers I was expecting on Thursday, and he was due. They send you an email first thing in the morning, and it said he would come between 18:23 and 19:23, and that was going to be in the middle of a small business big magic call, which I wasn't worried about. But I knew I'd seen first thing in the morning when they send that email that he had over 150 stops to make that day, and eventually he rocked up at closer to 9 o'clock than 7:23. But I hadn't realised that I would be number 148 of those 150 visits that he had to make. And I asked him, could he go home now? And he said, no, he'd got 2 more to do. I told him as I opened the door in the sort of semi-darkness that he was a hero and a bloody star. And he was laughing in the dusk because, what a guy, what a night of the road. He cheerfully had to face almost unbearable stress. So getting in and out of your van 150 times in a day, being late at 9 o'clock at night. And imagine how someone like me could have been cross with him because I'd had to sit in for more than an hour and a half waiting. I was just grateful and full of admiration for anyone who could work that job long, hard. But then I realised if you can smile at 9 o'clock in the night after rude members of the public all day long, it's all in the mindset, isn't it? Everything. He could have been miserable, but he wasn't.
Yeah, absolutely. There's some amazing waiting staff in this hotel as well that are just going.
And the public are impossible. So how anybody does a job like that, I think he's a knight of the road. I'm in love with him.
Yeah, absolutely. Lovely. I like the very specificity of 9:23.
Well, that's what they do, you see. They do this, the courier companies do this quite a lot. And mostly it works in that window. But I think if you've got 150 stops and you've got 12 hours to do it in and it takes you 15 hours, it gets less reliable as the day goes on. I think I did go onto their website once and it said, sorry, we're running a bit late or something lame like that. But you're bound to be running a bit late in London, in the UK's traffic if you've got to drive about and get in and out of your van.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, well, that's us done then.
It is us done, and you'll be back in beautiful downtown Shoreham this time next week, won't you?
Yes, I will. So,
all right, I'll see you then.
About the yacht and the final party.
All right, babe. See you then. Okay, bye.
How do they do it? Not a care and suffering. Wanna step into their world.
You've been listening to Nicola Cairncross and Judith Morgan. The podcast is called Own It, Your Business and Your Life. Do come and visit us at ownitthepodcast.com. We'd love to hear your feedback. You can find out more about Judith and visit her on her website at judithmorgan.com, and you can find Nicola at nicolacairncross.com.